You ever hear metal scream? Not bend, not crack. Scream. That's the sound a bullet makes when it punches through a steel door 18 inches from your head. Brooklyn, 1989. I'd driven that waterfront 100 times. I thought I knew every shadow on those streets. I was wrong, and I had 4 hours to live through being wrong before sunup. The windshield went white before I even heard the shot. Just white, then a spiderweb of cracks spreading out from a hole the size of my thumb, right at the height where my head had been half a second earlier. I was already down. Don't ask me how. 22 years behind the wheel teaches your body things your brain never agrees to. 1 second, I'm sitting up checking my mirror for the turn into the pier gate. The next, I'm folded into the footwell with my knees against the dash and my heart trying to punch its way out through my ribs. Outside, the night had turned into something out of a war newsreel. Muzzle flash lighting up the brick walls in flickers like a strobe at the world's worst dance. 2 cars, maybe 3, screaming around the container yard fence. And somewhere in between all that, me, 18 wheels and 40,000 pounds of refrigerated seafood, parked dead center in somebody else's war. If you're new here, I tell stories like this every week. Real ones, from 20-some years hauling freight across this country. The kind of nights that don't make it into any company training video. Hit subscribe before you go, because next week, I've got one from a whiteout in Montana that still gives me chills, and I don't want you missing it. Now let me tell you how I ended up on the floor of my own truck at 1 in the morning, listening to Brooklyn try to kill itself around me. My name's Salvatore, if my mother's calling, which she did, every Sunday, rain or snow or hijacking, until the day she passed. I grew up in Bayonne, Jersey, close enough to the city that you could see the towers from my bedroom window if you stood on the dresser, which I did, plenty, as a kid who couldn't sleep. My father drove a beer truck for 30 years out of a depot on Route 1, and I swore up and down I'd never do what he did, sit in traffic-breathing diesel for a paycheck that never quite caught up to rent. Funny how that goes. I was behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler by 23, and I never really stopped. I knew the metro area the way some men know scripture. Every bridge toll, every truck route that the cops actually enforced versus the ones they didn't. Every diner on Hunts Point that would still serve you eggs at 3 in the morning without asking questions about why you smelled like a man who'd slept 4 hours in 5 days. I worked reefer freight mostly. Refrigerated trailers, the kind that keep produce and seafood and meat from turning into something you wouldn't feed a dog. It's a demanding kind of hauling. You're not just driving. You're babysitting a unit that has to run 24 hours a day, watching the temperature gauge like it's a patient in the ICU. Because if that reefer unit dies on you in the middle of summer, you're not hauling cargo anymore. You're hauling a problem that smells like the end of the world. That night, I was running a load out of a cold storage facility in Hunts Point, the big market up in the South Bronx where half the produce and seafood in this city moves through before anybody's even awake to buy it. 41,000 pounds of frozen shrimp and scallops, bound for a wholesale receiver down on a pier in Red Hook, Brooklyn, right on the water. The kind of run that should have taken 40 minutes if traffic behaved. Hunts Point to Red Hook, down through the BQE, off at the right exit, straight shot to the gate. The receiver had one rule, and it was carved in stone. Dock doors closed at 6 a.m. sharp. Not 6:01. Not, we'll let you slide because traffic. 6 a.m. because their crew clocked out and the next shift didn't start receiving until 8. And if you missed that window, your load sat on a hot trailer Or in my case, a trailer running its reefer unit on a generator that was already coughing for 2 extra hours in a Brooklyn summer morning, and shrimp doesn't care about your excuses. My dispatcher had spelled it out plain before I left the yard. Miss the 6 a.m. window, and the company eats a $4,000 spoilage claim, and that comes out of driver pay same as it comes out of company pocket, because that's how the contract with this particular receiver worked. $4,000. I did the math more than once that night, the way you chew on a sore tooth even when you know it'll hurt. I left Hunts Point a little after midnight. Plenty of cushion, I figured. 5-6 hours to cover a drive that takes under an hour without traffic. I wasn't worried about time. I was worried, if anything, about my reefer unit, which had been running a little rough the last 50 miles into the city, temperature climbing half a degree higher than I liked every time I checked the gauge. I had a CB radio on, channel 19 mostly, the truckers' channel, half listening to chatter about a jackknifed flatbed somewhere out on the Cross Bronx, half listening to my own thoughts, which that year had gotten louder than I liked. See, here's the part of the story where I tell you the thing that was eating at me. Because every driver carries something, and if I don't tell you mine, none of what happens later makes sense. I'd been divorced 2 years. Teresa and I had been married since I was 25, and somewhere in there, between the long hauls and the short hauls and the loads that kept me gone 5 and 6 days a week, the marriage had quietly died of neglect, the way plants die when you forget to water them. Not dramatic, not a single moment you can point to, just a slow drying out that you don't notice until the leaves are already brown. We had one daughter, Angela, who was 16 that year and furious at me in the particular way teenage girls get furious at fathers who weren't around enough. Not loud furious, worse than that, quiet furious, the kind where she'd answer my phone calls in 3 words and hand the phone back to her mother before I could find a fourth thing to say. I told myself the long hauls were for her, for the college fund, for the house payment, for all the things a man tells himself when the truth is simpler and uglier, that I didn't know how to be in a room with my own family anymore, that the cab of an 18-wheeler had become easier for me than my own living room, that the silence out on Route 80 at 3 in the morning was the silence I'd chosen over the silence at my own kitchen table. A man can convince himself of a lot of things when the alternative is admitting he ran from something instead of toward it. That night, somewhere around the George Washington Bridge, my radio had crackled with a call from a trucker I half knew, goes by the handle Brooklyn Pete, an old salt who'd hauled this exact route for longer than I had. "Yo, Jersey Sal, that you on the BQE run tonight?" His voice came through, scratchy, half drowned in static. "Yeah, that's a big 10-4. Pete," I said back. "Hauling shrimp down to Red Hook. Gotta beat the 6 a.m. door." "Watch yourself down by the piers tonight," he said, and something in his voice had gone flat in a way I didn't like. There's been some bad blood between a couple crews working that waterfront. Heard it on the scanner before I came up this way. Stay sharp, you copy? "Copy that," I said, and didn't think much more of it. Truth is, every trucker who's run that waterfront long enough has heard some version of that warning. Brooklyn in '89 wasn't the Brooklyn you'd recognize today with its coffee shops and its renovated lofts. Whole stretches of that waterfront back then were half abandoned. Warehouses with broken windows, container yards with chain-link fences rusted through, streets where the city's authority kind of thinned out after midnight, and something else filled the gap. 2 rival crews running drugs and protection rackets through that stretch of docks. I knew the general shape of it the way every driver who worked those streets knew it. The way you know there's ice on a bridge in winter without needing to see it to believe it. You just drove careful and didn't ask questions and got your freight where it needed to go. I checked my temperature gauge again, 41 degrees, climbing slow. Should have been holding at 38, not an emergency yet. Just a thing to watch. I came down off the BQE around 1:30, weaving through the surface streets of Red Hook, that particular Brooklyn quiet that isn't quiet at all if you listen. Distant traffic on the highway overhead, a foghorn somewhere out on the water, the hum of my own diesel engine and the rattle of the reefer unit working too hard. Warehouses on either side of me, dark, hulking, some with faded company names painted on brick from decades back, ghost signs for businesses that didn't exist anymore. I had maybe 2 miles left to the pier gate. That's when I saw the first car. Low rider, headlights off, sitting half in an alley between 2 warehouses like it was waiting on something. I didn't think much of it. Brooklyn at 1:30 in the morning has its share of cars sitting where they shouldn't be sitting. I kept my speed steady, hands loose on the wheel the way you learn to keep them when you're driving somewhere. Your gut tells you to be polite and unremarkable. And I rolled on past. 3 blocks later is when the second car came screaming out from a side street, no headlights either, and the first car peeled out of its alley behind me. And that's when the radio chatter started. Not my CB, but a sound I felt more than heard. The particular note of 2 engines redlining at the same time in a space that narrow brick walls, throwing the sound back at you twice as loud as it should be. I want you to understand something about driving a 41,000-pound rig. It does not stop fast. It does not turn fast. It does not get out of the way fast. Everything you do in that cab, you do slow, deliberate, because the laws of physics do not care about your emergency. So when the first shots cracked out, and I want to be clear, at first I genuinely thought it was a blown tire, that specific bang that sounds almost identical to a gunshot if you've never actually heard one up close. I didn't swerve. I couldn't swerve. I eased off the gas and started looking for anywhere at all, to get this rig out of the kill zone that the 2-block stretch of Brooklyn waterfront in front of me had just become. The second shot took out my passenger mirror. I felt that one. Felt the glass spray, felt something sting along my forearm where a fragment caught me. And that's when every instinct that 22 years on the road had built into me took over, and I went down below the dash, foot still somehow finding the brake, because some animal part of my brain understood that a 41,000-pound truck rolling free through a crossfire was its own kind of disaster, gunfire or no gunfire. The truck shuddered to a stop. I don't know exactly where, exactly how, just that it stopped. And I was on the floor of my own cab, knees against the dash, glass in my hair, the smell of cordite already finding its way through my cracked windshield. And outside, the gunfire kept going and going. 2 cars circling each other in that narrow stretch of Brooklyn street like sharks. And somewhere underneath all of it, my reefer unit kept humming along, still trying to keep 41,000 pounds of shrimp at 38 degrees, like the whole world hadn't just gone insane around it. I thought about Angela. That's the truth, plain as I can give it to you. Not about dying, exactly, not yet. That thought hadn't fully landed on me. I thought about the last conversation we'd had, 4 sentences long, her handing the phone back to her mother before I'd even finished my second one. I thought, if this is it, if this is genuinely it, the last thing my daughter and I ever said to each other was nothing, was 4 sentences about nothing, was a closed door dressed up as a phone call. And something about that thought made me angrier than the bullets did, angrier than I had any right to be. lying on the floor of a truck cab in the middle of somebody else's gang war. But there it was. I checked my watch. 1:47 a.m. The receiver's gate closed at 6. I had a little over 4 hours, and I was lying on the floor of my own truck listening to a war happen 6 feet above my head. I don't know how long I stayed down there. Time does something strange to you in a moment like that. It stretches and compresses in the same breath, so that 30 seconds feels like 10 minutes, and 10 minutes feels like it passed in a blink. What I remember clearly is the sound shifting. The gunfire, which had been close, walls shaking close, started moving. One set of engines peeling off, tires shrieking against asphalt, heading away from me down toward the water, and the other set following close behind. And then it was quiet. Not safe. Quiet. Battlefield quiet. The kind where you don't trust it, where you stay down another full minute just to be sure the silence isn't a trick. When I finally raised my head above the dash, my windshield looked like a spider web after a hailstorm. 2 clean holes punched through the glass, a third one lower down that had taken out most of my passenger mirror entirely. My arm was bleeding from where the glass fragment had caught me. Not bad. A shallow line, maybe 3 inches long, the kind of cut that hurts worse than it threatens. I sat there for a second, just breathing, hands shaking on the wheel. And then I did what 22 years of trucking trains you to do even when your whole body wants to do anything else. I checked my gauges. Reefer temp, 43 degrees and climbing. That generator that had been coughing rough for the last 50 miles had apparently decided this was the moment to really start failing. 41,000 pounds of shrimp and scallops, and I had a unit that was losing the fight against a warm Brooklyn summer night. I keyed my CB. Breaker, breaker, this is Jersey Sal. Anybody on this channel? I just rode out a shooting on the Red Hook waterfront. I need to know if it's clear up ahead toward the piers. Static. Then Brooklyn Pete's voice came back, tighter than before. Sal, that you? I heard shots on the scanner. They said shots fired near the container yards. You all right? I'm all right. Truck took a couple of hits. I'm parked dead in the middle of it. I think they moved off toward the water. My voice came out steadier than I felt, which is its own kind of lesson about what the body can do when it has to. Don't move yet, Pete said. Cops'll be rolling through there in a minute. They always do after shots fired, even down in that stretch. Let 'em clear it first. You move now. You're driving right back into whatever's still finishing up down there. I didn't love sitting still. Every part of me wanted to put my foot down and get gone, get anywhere else. But Pete had 30 years on that waterfront, and I had reason to trust a voice with that much road in it. So I sat. I watched my reefer gauge climb another degree while I sat. 44 now. The patrol car came through about 6 minutes later, lights flashing but no siren, slow, careful, the way cops move through a neighborhood that's just proven it can bite. 2 officers, and they pulled up alongside my cab, and one of them, a heavy-set guy with a face that had seen this exact kind of night more times than he probably wanted to count, rolled down his window and looked at my windshield, 2 holes clean through it, and just shook his head like this was Tuesday. You hit? He asked. Arms cut from glass, that's it. You see who it was? Didn't see faces. 2 cars, low riders, no plates I caught. They were chasing each other down toward the water. I gave him what little I had, which wasn't much, and he wrote it down without much hope on his face that it would lead anywhere, which told me plenty about how often this particular stretch of road produced this particular kind of report. This whole block's been hot for about 3 weeks. the other officer said, leaning across his partner. Two crews fighting over who runs product through these warehouses. We bust one, 3 more pop up. You want my advice? You don't run this route at night for a while. I got a delivery window at 6 a.m. on a pier 4 blocks from here, I said. Not exactly in a position to pick a new route tonight. He looked at me for a second, then nodded slow, like that math made a certain grim sense to him. All right. We'll roll ahead of you to the pier gate. Make sure it's clear. After that, you're on your own, but I think the action's moved off toward the water for tonight. They don't usually circle back same night. Usually. I held on to that word for the rest of the drive, like a man holding a rope he isn't sure is tied to anything. The escort got me the last 4 blocks without further incident, and at the pier gate, which, mercifully, hadn't fallen into the crossfire, the patrol car peeled off with a wave and left me alone with a security guard at a chain-link gate who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. You're early, he said, checking my paperwork under a buzzing sodium light. Dock crew don't start unloading till 4. I got a reefer issue, I told him. Temps climbing. I need to know if there's anywhere on this lot I can plug into shore power. Anything before this whole load turns into garbage. He didn't have good news. The pier's electrical hookups were for their own equipment, not visiting trailers, and the only mechanic on call for reefer repairs at that hour was a guy named Dom who ran a 1-bay shop about 15 minutes inland. And Dom, the guard informed me, with the particular relish of a man delivering bad news he doesn't have to live with, didn't pick up his shop phone after midnight unless you called the right number, which the guard happened to have, because Dom had fixed his own car once. I called. It rang 9 times before a thick, sleep-wrecked voice answered, "This better be good." "Dom, it's not good. It's a reefer unit dying on a load of shrimp with a 6 a.m. delivery window, and I need either a part or a miracle." There was a long pause, the kind where you can hear a man deciding whether tonight is the night he stops being a decent person, and then a sigh. "What unit you running?" I told him. He grunted. "Could be the condenser fan motor, could be a relay, won't know till I look at it. I'm 20 minutes out. You got cash?" "I don't do checks at 2 in the morning." "I got cash." "Then don't touch nothing. Don't open that trailer. Every time you open the doors, you're letting warm air in and making my job harder before I even start." "I'll be there." I sat in that lot for those 20 minutes with the engine of my mind running a lot hotter than my actual engine, replaying the last hour, the windshield, the cut on my arm that had stopped bleeding but still throbbed in a slow, insistent way, the 4 sentences with Angela that kept circling back no matter how hard I tried to push them out. My reefer gauge climbed to 46. I did the math on spoilage temperature for raw shellfish, and the number wasn't comforting. Dom showed up in a beat-up panel van with his name stenciled on the side in paint that had started peeling sometime during the Carter administration. He was maybe 60, built like a man who'd spent 4 decades wrestling engines into submission, and he climbed up on my catwalk without a word of complaint about the hour, popped the access panel on the reefer unit, and went quiet in the particular way mechanics go quiet when they're actually working instead of talking. "Condenser fan motor," he called down after about 4 minutes. "Bearings shot, probably been going for a while. You said it was running rough the last 50 miles? "Yeah." "There's your answer. I got a motor on the truck that'll fit, but I gotta tell you, swapping it out here in a parking lot at 2 in the morning isn't a 15-minute job. Looking at closer to an hour, maybe an hour and 10 if a bolt fights me." I looked at my watch. 2:11. Gate closed at 6. An hour and 10 minutes put me at 3:20, give or take, which still left time. But every minute that ticked by on this job was a minute the temperature inside that trailer kept climbing. And every degree past a certain point on raw shellfish wasn't coming back down clean even once the unit got fixed. There's a difference between a unit running again and a unit running fast enough to undo damage already done. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. While Dom worked, my CB crackled again, Brooklyn Pete checking back in. You make it to the gate all right, Sal? Made it. Now I got a reefer unit dying on me too, like the night wasn't generous enough already. Pete laughed, short and tired. Story of this job, brother. Listen, you need anything, I'm parked up at the truck stop on the other side of the expressway. I got a thermos of coffee that could probably strip paint, but it'll keep you upright. Appreciate it, Pete. I think I'm gonna be stuck here a while yet. Then I'll keep this channel open. Talk to you, not at you. Sometimes a man needs the second one after a night like you're having. That was Pete's way, and I'd come to understand over the years that the CB radio wasn't just a tool for traffic reports and way station warnings. For drivers like us, alone in cabs for weeks at a stretch, it was sometimes the only human voice you got that wasn't barking orders through a dispatch radio or asking you, 4 words at a time, to please put your mother back on the phone. Pete talked to me for the next 40 minutes while Dom worked, about nothing important, about a flat he'd had outside Scranton 2 winters back, about his ex-wife's new husband who apparently couldn't back a trailer to save his life, about the diner up near Hunts Point that made eggs the way his own mother used to make them. None of it mattered, and all of it mattered, because it kept my mind from circling the drain of bullet holes and bleeding arms, and a daughter who'd hung up on me in 4 sentences. Dom finished at 3:26, wiped his hands on a rag that had given up being clean sometime in the previous decade, and climbed down. New motors in. Give it 10 minutes to pull that temp back down where it should be. Then you check it before they start unloading. Anything past 45 on shellfish for more than a couple hours, the receiver's going to have their own inspector flag it regardless of what your gauge says now. How much I owe you? $220. Cash, like I said. I paid him, and he climbed back into his panel van without another word. The kind of transaction that happens at 3 in the morning between men who understand that some jobs don't need conversation attached to them. Just competence and a fair price. I sat in the cab and watched the temperature gauge crawl back down. 45, 43, 41. It was working, but it was working slow, and the clock on my dash read 3:41. I had 2 hours and 19 minutes until that gate closed, and a temperature that needed to drop another 3 or 4 degrees before I'd feel anything like confident handing this load over without a fight from the receiver's quality inspector. That's when my dispatch radio, separate unit from the CB, this one connected straight to my company's office, crackled to life. Our night dispatcher, a woman named Carol who'd been doing this job since before I started and had a voice that could cut glass when she needed it to, came through flat and businesslike. Sal, you're showing stopped for over an hour at your GPS ping. Talk to me. I gave her the short version, the shooting, the windshield, the reefer failure, Dom, the new motor, all of it compressed into maybe 90 seconds because Carol didn't have patience for a man padding out a story when the clock was the only thing that mattered to her right now. Jesus, Sal. A pause, the particular pause of a dispatcher doing math in her head about claims and contracts and penalty clauses. Receiver called 20 minutes ago asking where you were. I told them you were in transit and didn't mention any of this because, frankly, I didn't know any of this. You think you make the window? I think so. Temp's coming back down. I'll know more in 20 minutes. If you're going to miss it, you call me the second you know. You understand? I can maybe negotiate the spoilage penalty down if I've got lead time to argue product was compromised by external circumstance, not driver negligence. But I need lead time, Sal. I can't fight that battle for you after the gate's already closed. Copy that. She clicked off, and I sat there in the relative quiet of a Brooklyn waterfront, slowly waking up around the edges. A longshoreman's pickup truck rumbling past, gulls starting their pre-dawn complaining out over the water, the distant grinding gear shift sound of the city deciding, reluctantly, to begin another day. And I thought about how strange it was that after surviving an actual gunfight, the thing keeping my hands tight on the wheel now was a number on a temperature gauge and a clock that didn't care what kind of night I'd had. 4 a.m. Temp at 39, finally inside an acceptable range, though I knew Dom's warning was still sitting heavy. The inspector might flag the load regardless, based on how long it had spent too warm, not just where it ended up. 2 hours until the gate closed. I started my engine, eased the truck forward those last few hundred feet toward the loading dock, and that's when I saw the man standing near the dock office, watching my truck roll up with an expression I couldn't quite read in the half-light, and something about the way he was standing, too still, too deliberate, like a man who'd been waiting specifically for this truck and not for trucks in general, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up all over again. I backed the trailer toward the dock slow, eyes flicking between my mirrors and that still figure by the office. And as I climbed down from the cab to handle the paperwork, he walked over, and up close I could see he was younger than I'd first guessed, maybe 30, wearing a windbreaker too light for the hour, and a face that looked like it hadn't slept properly in longer than one night. "You're the driver hauling the Pacific seafood order?" he asked. "That's me." I kept my voice neutral. After the night I'd had, neutral felt like the only safe register left in me. "I'm Marcus. I run receiving for the night crew, but I also—" He hesitated, glanced back toward the dock office, lowered his voice. "Look, I gotta ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. You came down through Red Hook tonight? Near the old Lindemann warehouse?" My stomach went tight. "Yeah, that's where it happened. 2 cars, gunfire, my windshield took 2 hits." He closed his eyes for a second, like a man absorbing news he'd been bracing for without quite knowing it was coming. "My brother works dispatch for one of the crews running that stretch. Not the violent end of it. He's not a shooter. He just moves information, tells people when trucks are coming through, when the coast is clear, that kind of thing. He called me an hour ago, scared out of his mind, saying things went sideways tonight between his crew and the other outfit that's been muscling in on their territory. Said somebody almost got killed who had nothing to do with any of it. A truck driver." I stood there on that dock, exhaust still ticking as my engine cooled, and felt something shift in my understanding of the night, the way a photograph shifts when you finally see the thing hidden in the negative space. "That was me, Marcus." "I know," he said, quiet. I knew when dispatch radioed up that a reefer truck with bullet holes in the windshield was rolling toward our gate. "There's only one truck that's going to show up looking like that tonight." He ran a hand over his face. "I need you to know, this wasn't random. Sort of. My brother's crew, they'd been tipped that a delivery truck for a different operation was supposed to be running through that exact stretch around that exact time tonight. A truck moving product disguised as a legitimate freight run, not seafood, something else, in a trailer that probably looks a whole lot like yours from a distance at 1 a.m. Refrigerated trailer, similar paint scheme, comes through that corridor most nights around that hour because that's when the legitimate seafood runs come through too, which is exactly why they picked that route and that hour to move their own stuff. It blends in. I felt something cold settle into my chest that had nothing to do with the early morning air. You're telling me I got shot at because my truck looked like somebody else's truck. I'm telling you that you got caught in between two crews who'd already decided tonight was the night this fight was happening, and the timing of your run happened to overlap with information that turned out to be wrong, or maybe right but mistimed. I don't fully know, and I don't think I want to know more than I already do. He looked genuinely sick saying it. My brother's not a bad person, mister. He just got into something years back that he doesn't know how to get out of without somebody deciding he knows too much to just walk away. He called me tonight crying, saying he thought a truck driver had gotten killed because of information he'd passed along. And I didn't know what to tell him except that I'd find out, because I run this dock and any seafood truck involved in a shooting tonight was going to end up exactly here, at my gate eventually. There it was. Not an investigation. Not a hired detective. Not some grand unmasking. Just two brothers on two different sides of the same waterfront economy. One of them scared enough to call the other, and the other one standing in front of me at 4 a.m, needing to know if a stranger had survived a mistake his own brother had set in motion. The truth arriving the way truth actually arrives most of the time in this life, sideways, through people who didn't plan on telling it, who told it because the alternative was carrying it alone. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Behind Marcus, the dock crew had started rolling out pallet jacks, the practical machinery of a workday beginning regardless of what either of us had just said to each other. My trailer doors needed opening. My temperature needed verifying. The clock on this delivery hadn't stopped because two men were standing in a parking lot working through something heavier than freight. "What do you want me to do with this, Marcus?" I asked finally. "You want me to be angry?" I am angry. I got 2 bullet holes in a windshield I gotta pay to replace, and a cut on my arm, and 40 minutes of my life I spent on the floor of my own cab listening to men try to kill each other for reasons that got nothing to do with me. But I also got 2 hours to make a delivery window or my company eats a $4,000 penalty. And I got a daughter at home who I haven't said a real sentence to in longer than I want to admit. And standing here arguing with you about whose fault tonight isn't gonna fix any single one of those things. Marcus nodded slow, like he'd expected exactly that answer, and respected it more than he would have respected fury. "I'm not asking you to forgive anybody. I'm telling you because you deserve to know why, and because..." He stopped, started again. "Because I'm going to have to live with knowing my brother's information almost got a stranger killed tonight, and the only thing that makes that easier to carry is making sure the stranger actually knows what happened, instead of just thinking Brooklyn's a dangerous place and leaving it at that. You weren't unlucky tonight, mister. You were specific kind of unlucky, the kind with a reason behind it, even if the reason's a bad one." "Sal," I said. "My name's Sal." "Sal." He extended a hand and I shook it, because what else do you do at 4 a.m. on a Brooklyn dock with a man who's just handed you the most honest accounting of a near-death experience you're ever likely to get? "Let's get your load checked in. I'll push the paperwork through fast, get you out of here, and Sal, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Truly. Not in the way people say it when they don't mean it. I'm sorry this happened to you." We walked the rest toward the dock together, and he called over his shoulder to a quality inspector who'd appeared from somewhere with a probe thermometer in hand, the kind that gets jammed straight into a case of product to verify it hasn't crossed into the danger zone. This was the moment, I understood, where 4 hours of fighting the clock either paid off or didn't. The inspector cracked open the first case near the trailer doors, the cold air of the reefer unit rolling out in a visible fog against the warming dawn air, and pressed the probe in. 36.8, he called out. That's within spec. I felt my shoulders drop about 2 inches, a tension I hadn't fully registered releasing all at once. Dom's new condenser fan motor had done its job. The 40 minutes I'd lost to a near-death gunfight hadn't translated into a ruined load after all, though it had been close enough that I understood, standing there, just how much of that outcome had depended on factors entirely outside my control. A mechanic who answered his phone at 2 a.m, a cop willing to escort a truck 4 blocks out of his own routine patrol, a dispatcher willing to fight a penalty clause on my behalf if it had gone the other way. None of those things were mine. I'd just been the man holding the wheel, while other people's competence and decency stitched together a version of this night that I could actually survive intact. The crew started unloading. Pallet by pallet, the 41,000 pounds of shrimp and scallops that had nearly cost my company $4,000 and had nearly cost me considerably more than that came off my trailer in the gray light just before sunrise. And I stood there watching it happen, and for the first time since the windshield had gone white, I let myself actually feel the morning. The smell of the harbor, salt and diesel, and the particular cold of pier water even in summer, gulls wheeling overhead now in full daylight chorus. The city behind me, starting its slow grinding wake-up that has nothing to do with whatever happened on its streets the night before. Marcus came back over once the last pallet rolled off. You're clear. Paperwork signed. You made the window with... He checked his watch. 40 minutes to spare if anybody asks. 40 minutes. I thought about that number the rest of the morning. 40 minutes of margin on a night that had included a gunfight, a windshield with 2 holes in it, a dying reefer unit, and a conversation that rearranged everything I thought I understood about why it had happened. 40 minutes felt like both nothing at all and like the entire distance between a story I'd tell for the rest of my life and one nobody would have lived to tell. I climbed back into my cab, my arm throbbing under the bandage I'd wrapped from a first aid kit I kept behind the seat, and keyed my CB radio one more time before pulling out of that lot. Pete, you still up? His voice came back tired but present. Still here, Sal. You make your window? Made it. 40 minutes to spare. I paused, looking out at the brightening sky over the harbor. Pete, you know why it happened? Why they were shooting at me specifically tonight? Nah, figured it was just bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time, like it usually is down there. It wasn't exactly that. And I told him the short version, the way Marcus had told me, and Pete went quiet on the other end for a good long while. That's a hell of a thing to carry, he finally said, knowing it wasn't random. I think I'd rather it was random, honestly. Random you can let go of easier. A reason, even a bad reason, that's something that sticks to you. He wasn't wrong. I drove the empty trailer back out of that lot with the morning sun cutting low and gold across the water, the kind of light that makes even a half-abandoned waterfront look like something worth photographing. And I thought about what Pete had said the rest of the way to the truck stop where I planned to pull in, eat something, and try to remember what it felt like to have a normal heartbeat. The truck stop sat just off the expressway, the kind of place that never really closes, neon sign half burned out so it read, True K Stop, missing its C the way half the signs in that part of Brooklyn seemed to be missing something by 1989. I backed my empty trailer into a spot near the back of the lot, away from the idling reefer units and the diesel pumps, and walked into a diner attached to the side of it that smelled like coffee, that had been on the burner since the Nixon administration, and bacon grease that had probably seasoned that griddle since before that. Brooklyn Pete was already there, parked 2 spots down from where I'd pulled in, and he was sitting in a booth by the window with 2 coffees in front of him when I walked in, like he'd known I'd come this exact direction. He was maybe 60, gray stubble, a face that had spent 4 decades being weathered by windshield glare and bad sleep. And he pushed one of the coffees across the table without a word as I sat down across from him. "You look like a man who's been shot at," he said. "Feels about right." I wrapped both hands around the mug, more for the steadiness of holding something than for the warmth. "Thanks for staying on the channel." "That's what the channel's for." He studied me for a second. "You gonna report all this? The shooting, I mean. To your company, to whoever needs reporting to." "Already told Dispatch the short version. I'll write up the full incident report once I'm back at the yard. Cops took my statement at the scene, for whatever that's worth." I took a sip of coffee that tasted exactly as old as it smelled, and somehow that was comforting too. An ordinary bad cup of diner coffee after a night that had been anything but ordinary. I don't know what good any of it does. Nobody's getting arrested off my statement. 2 cars with no plates I could read, in a neighborhood the cops already told me they can't get a handle on. It just becomes a number in a file somewhere. "Most things do," Pete said, not unkindly. "Just true. That's the job sometimes. You live through something that feels like it should mean something, and the world just files it and moves on to the next thing. Took me years to stop expecting different." I thought about Marcus, about his brother somewhere in that crew system, terrified, crying on a phone call in the middle of the night because information he'd passed along had nearly gotten a stranger killed. I thought about whether that brother would still be in that life a year from now, 5 years from now, whether Marcus's call to me at the dock gate had been the first crack in something that might eventually break him free of it, or whether it had just been one decent man trying to make sense of an indecent situation he couldn't actually change. I didn't know. I'd probably never know. That's its own kind of hard thing to sit with, the not knowing how a story that touched your life turns out for the people who'll keep living inside it after you drive away. "You gonna call your daughter?" Pete asked, like he'd been listening to my thoughts instead of just the radio static of the last few hours. I looked up at him. "I didn't tell you about my daughter." "You didn't have to. Man gets shot at. First thing he thinks about is whoever he's most afraid of losing without having said what needed saying. I've been divorced twice, Sal. I know the look." I turned my coffee mug a slow half circle on the table, watching the liquid catch the diner's fluorescent light. "We don't talk much. Hasn't been much to say in a while, or that's not true. There's plenty to say. Neither one of us knows how to start saying it anymore." "You got a quarter on you? Or is it a dial tone and a number now, this hour?" Pete nodded toward a payphone bolted to the wall near the diner's restroom, the kind every truck stop in America had back then, scratched plastic shell, a phone book chained beside it that nobody had updated in years. I did have a quarter. I'd had it in my pocket since the start of this run, the kind of habit a man builds when payphones are how you check in with dispatch from the road, before everybody had those car phones that cost more than a used truck. I sat there for a second longer, finishing the coffee, working up something that wasn't quite courage and wasn't quite exhaustion, but lived somewhere in the overlap between them. And then I got up and walked to that phone and dialed my own house at 5:40 in the morning, knowing full well it would wake somebody up, and not particularly caring anymore whether that was the polite thing to do. It rang 4 times. Teresa answered, voice thick with sleep and the particular wariness of a woman who'd learned that calls at this hour from her ex-husband usually meant something had gone wrong on the road. "Sal, what happened? Are you okay?" "I'm okay. I got into something tonight. A bad scene. I'm fine. Truck took some damage, but I'm fine." I heard her exhale, the relief audible even through a phone line. "Teresa, I know it's early. I know I don't usually call like this, but I almost didn't get to make a phone call ever again tonight, and I spent the worst part of it thinking about how the last thing Angela and I said to each other was nothing. 4 sentences about nothing. I don't want that to be the shape of things between us anymore. I don't know how to fix 20 years of being gone in one phone call. I know that's not how it works, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to want to try, if that makes any sense at all." There was a long quiet on the other end, the kind that isn't empty, just full of a woman deciding how much honesty the moment could hold. "It makes sense, Sal," she finally said. "She's awake, actually. Couldn't sleep. She's been up doing homework at the kitchen table since 4. You want me to get her?" My chest did something complicated at that. "Yeah, if she's willing." There was a muffled exchange, footsteps, and then Angela's voice, wary in the exact way I'd expected, 16 years old and braced for disappointment because disappointment was the pattern I'd taught her to expect from calls like this one. "Dad, Mom said something happened." "I'm okay, sweetheart. I got caught up in something rough tonight, on the road, in Brooklyn. I'm not hurt bad, but I wanted to call you anyway, not because something happened, but because I've been thinking about how the last few times we talked, I let you hand the phone back before I said anything real. And that's on me, not you. I don't have some big speech here. I'm sitting in a diner at 5:45 in the morning and my hands still won't stop shaking a little. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you tonight, in the worst part of it, and that I'm sorry it's taken something like almost not making it home for me to say a true sentence to you instead of a quick one." The silence on her end stretched longer than her mother's had. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its practiced wariness, replaced by something younger and more uncertain. "Are you really okay?" "I'm really okay, banged up. Truck's got a couple new scars. But I'm driving home in a few hours, and I was hoping, if you're around this weekend, maybe I could take you to that diner you used to like on Route 1, the one with the milkshakes you and your friends always wanted to go to, but I was never around for. I'm not asking for everything fixed in one conversation. I'm asking for one milkshake and one conversation that isn't 4 sentences long." "Yeah," she said, quiet. And there was something in that single word that I chose to hear as a door cracking open rather than fully thrown wide. Because that's honestly all I had any right to expect after the years of silence I'd helped build between us. "Yeah, okay. I'd like that." We talked another few minutes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make for a better story than the gunfight itself. Just a father and a daughter trading small true sentences across a phone line at dawn. And when I hung up, I stood there at that payphone for a moment with my hand still resting on the receiver, and Pete, watching from the booth, didn't say anything when I sat back down. He just slid a fresh cup of coffee across the table, the old one having gone cold while I was on the phone, and let the moment be exactly as big or as small as it needed to be without narrating it for me. "Good?" he asked eventually. "Good's a strong word. Started, maybe. That's enough for one morning." We sat there another 20 minutes, not saying much. 2 truckers in a diner booth at the tail end of a long shift, and then I paid for both coffees, because that's what you do for a man who keeps a channel open for you through the worst night of your year. And I walked back out to my truck. The morning had fully arrived by then. That particular gold light that Brooklyn gets for about 45 minutes after sunrise, before the haze of the day settles in and flattens everything back to gray and brick-colored. My windshield, 2 clean holes punched through the safety glass, caught that light strange, refracting it into little prisms across the dashboard, and I sat there for a second just looking at that, at the physical evidence of a night I'd survived telling for the rest of my life. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that, because there's a version of this story where I drive off into that sunrise feeling like a man who'd beaten something, conquered it, come out the other side, transformed into someone braver or wiser. That's not quite true. What I felt, pulling out of that truck stop lot and pointing my rig back toward the bridge in New Jersey beyond it, was something quieter than triumph. A kind of settling, the understanding that some nights just happen to you, for reasons that have nothing to do with your own choices, and the only thing you actually control is what you do once the bullets stop and the sun comes up anyway. I drove home with 2 holes in my windshield that the company would have to pay to fix, a cut on my arm that would scar into a thin, pale line I'd carry the rest of my driving life, and a phone call sitting in my chest like something warm instead of something heavy for the first time, in longer than I wanted to admit. The odometer kept turning the way it always does, indifferent to gunfire and grief and milkshake promises alike, counting the miles between Red Hook and Bayonne the same patient way it counted every mile before and every mile that would come after. I never did find out what happened to Marcus's brother, whether he got out of that life or stayed buried in it, whether the 2 crews fighting over that stretch of waterfront ever settled their war or just kept bleeding into each other's territory for years afterward, the way these things sometimes do, quietly, off the news, off anybody's radar except the people living inside it. Some stories don't hand you an ending. They just hand you the part you were present for, and then they keep going somewhere you'll never see, with people whose names you'll forget before their faces do, and you're left carrying just your own small piece of it, which in my case turned out to be this: a windshield, a milkshake promise, and the particular gold color the harbor throws up at sunrise after a night that had every reason to be the last one I ever saw. That milkshake happened, by the way, that following Saturday. Angela ordered chocolate. I had vanilla because my father always said a man who orders chocolate at a diner is showing off, and old habits, even small dumb ones like that, have a way of riding along with you no matter how much else about you changes. We didn't solve 20 years of distance over 2 milkshakes and a basket of fries. Nobody does that. But we talked longer than 4 sentences, and that was the whole and entire point. I still drive that route sometimes, Hunts Point to Red Hook, though I take it a little more careful at night now, and I still listen for Brooklyn Pete on Channel 19, though he retired off the road 2 years after that night, and I haven't heard his handle called in a long while. The waterfront's changed plenty since 1989. Half those warehouses are something else now, condos or galleries or empty lots waiting on developers. The particular danger of that stretch mostly paved over by time and money the way danger in cities often is, replaced eventually by a different and quieter set of problems. But every time I roll through there before dawn, temperature gauge steady, radio quiet, I think about a windshield with 2 holes in it, and a daughter who said, "Yeah, okay, I'd like that." And I think that's about as honest an ending as this job ever hands a man. Not a clean one, not a triumphant one. Just true. If this one got you, if you felt that windshield crack from where you're sitting, Do me a favor and drop a comment telling me where you were the first time something on the road scared you bad enough to think about who you'd call if it all went wrong. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, this channel's full of nights like this one. Real freight, real roads, real men and women who live through things you wouldn't believe if a movie tried to sell it to you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because next week's story comes out of a whiteout in Montana that nearly buried a rig and the man inside it, and trust me, you don't want to find out how that one ends without me telling it to you straight, the way it actually happened.